Awesome, thank you guys. Yeah, my name is Lloyd Barker. I'm from Humboldt County, and my business is the local worm guy Compost. It's a business that I run with my wife, and it's just the two of us. So this is a video from a while ago, actually, but it does explain quite a bit about our business. It was done by my dear friend and colleague, Stephen Winteroth, who, along with his friend and assistant, Justin, are here today doing, recording this for posterity. I'm putting him on the spot mainly because this was his college project, and so I know that were he to redo it, he might do it potentially differently. And much like a lot of what you will see in this video, I also do things a lot differently now. But I wanted to show you this as an introduction to my farm and what I do.
I love worms. Worms are great. When people mention worms, they're usually talking about them either comically or derogatorily or some way in which that they're being undervalued. The local worm guy is owned and operated by my wife Stacy and I, and we have our farm on my property in Philbrook where we raise our worms and have our worm ranch. Being a small business owner in Humboldt County is something that I'm really proud of. We provide worms year-round, all around Humboldt County. Compostable material diversion services for local businesses and vermicompost for use in home or commercial gardening. Local Worm Guy also composts for Humboldt State University. We receive a load of compostable food waste from the cafeteria and other on-campus locations here at our farm, and we turn it into worm food. The application of vermiculture has a lot of potential in the world to solve problems that are specifically tailored to what the worm is able to do. They're such a small creature. The tiniest worm can eat its own weight or even twice its own weight in food every day, which means that you get several hundred pounds of worms together, and all of a sudden you've got a really hungry machine that's going to process and eat a lot of organic compostable material. And they do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Worms are able to eat a lot of what we would consider trash. Trash now is a really broad category, but worms are able to process anything that's made out of food, anything that's made out of paper or carbon or wood, or anything basically that would break down if you were to otherwise not put it in a landfill and throw it away as trash. When a worm eats something and it goes through its body and becomes casting or poop, then the plants that encounter that material are able to use those nutrients to grow healthy, awesome food or flowers. Worms are what we call hermaphroditic. They are both male and female, which means they are able to reproduce, but it takes two worms to reproduce. I started this business because I was concerned about the environment and wanted to find a way that I could make a difference in the community, make a difference on the planet, so that we could actually see material that would otherwise be wasted and make it into something that's good and usable and has value, not just for us as individuals, but for us as a society. And we're finding new ways every day to compost and collect material for people in Humboldt County and provide them a service that they really want in order to feel good about their own impact on the environment. If you see worms, just remember that they are really important and they are doing something that nothing else on the planet does quite as well or in quite the same way.
right. So yeah, thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. I'm going to focus today on compostable material collection. I've split that up into 3 different categories. We've got commercial, residential, and drop-off. This drop-off bin is actually the bin of one of our regional participants, which is Full Cycle. They're here today, Isaac. Just had clavicle surgery and still made it here, which is just an absolute testament to his desire and fortitude as a composter. So props to you for being here. And I will actually ask you at some point to come up and talk about your drop-off. And they do a bicycle-powered pickup, so a very awesome method for collecting residential compost. Okay, so what we do when you're first planning on this, you really need to look at who you're going to be collecting for, how you're going to be doing it, and how you're going to be processing that material. So really you want to identify your customers, see who in your community is interested and or mandated to be composting, work with them, make a list of who your participants are going to be, who you're going to approach, and then start a plan for that. Know how you're going to be dealing with this material. Are you going to be doing it for yourself on your own land? Are you going to be utilizing community composting sites? Or are you going to be utilizing a larger commercial facility or a larger community composter in your area? So it's important to know this because it's really, if you're doing it yourself, you're going to have to decide what kind of system you have, how that system is going to actually be successful in processing this material, and that will determine what material you are and aren't able to accept. So for example, if you're doing just worms, then citrus, dairy, meat, things like that are going to be restricted. If, as you saw in this video, I do pre-composting and then feed it to the worms, so my system's able to handle pretty much anything that's compostable food waste, including all of those meat, cheese, meat, dairy, citrus, bones, and things like that. I do limit raw meat, but otherwise we accept all material. And then how are you actually going to be collecting this material? Are you going to be using a car and dumping material into another receptacle? Are you going to have a truck and load the containers? Are you going to do it on a bike and a trailer? Or are you going to have a drop-off site that's open to the public? And in this case, I think that most of us will have some sort of open to the public site, as that's one of the requirements for CCGS. So, but being open to the public can also still mean a restricted audience. You can still control hours and access and things like that to the bin. So it doesn't necessarily mean that just anyone can come in and put whatever they want in there, and I highly recommend that you set it up so that doesn't happen. It'll make your life a lot easier. Okay, so as far as residential customers, right now we have just over 200 residential customers in Humboldt County. We provide a black bucket with a liner, and we switch that out when we pick up our material, and then we load those containers into a trailer and continue the route. So we don't dump the material, we don't leave a dirty bucket, we switch that out. There are pros and cons that I'll get to on that. It is a lot cleaner, there's a lot more time and energy involved in that, and a little bit more cost as well. Communication is really the key here with your residents and any customers really. You want to make sure that they understand exactly what materials you can and can't accept, how you're going to be structuring your route, certain times and things like that. And also you really want to make sure that there's an open line of communication between you and your customers, whether that's cell phone, texts, emails, anything like that. I highly recommend being able to text your customers. If they don't, then email. As far as drop-off goes, it's probably a little bit more forgiving, but it's very helpful to be able to talk to your customers and if you see something in their bin that you can't take or that's not compostable that maybe they think is compostable, it really helps to be able to take a picture of that, send it to them and say, hey, really appreciate your business, but this this I can't take, and so that's just going to slow me down. So next time, just try and keep that out of your bin. Yeah, and consistency is really important. You know, they come to rely on you for that service, and they expect you know, a certain amount of consistency being there, not leaving them with material that they can't handle or don't know what to do with. And so, yeah, communicating to your customers if you can't make it, or if something happens, if your truck breaks down, let them know. Let them know before they contact you if possible. People are a lot more forgiving if they understand why you're not there, they understand why you're going to be late, than just looking at a full bucket and not knowing where you are, what happened, or when that bucket might be changed out. And of course, that's the same with commercial as well. So, let's see. So service, kind of covered most of that. So yeah, you definitely want to communicate your pickup windows, try and make them reasonable for people, make it so that it fits with their schedules or what they would expect, you know, for that sort of service. It does help to not be traveling around at peak hours, like rush hour or when schools are getting out. I do prefer to try and get those pickups done before or after those windows. But that is, you know, specific to your region, and you'll get to know that as you're moving around in your own area. So containers, a big part of the service is what kind of container these people are using. So your customers are going to be bringing these containers into their homes, or at least near their homes, or somehow they're going to be interacting with these containers very often. So it's really important that they're easy for them to use and they're easy for you to use. One of the reasons that I use those black buckets, they nest very easily. Unfortunately with that, they're also brand new, so they're being manufactured for this use. You can use used containers, but they get very tricky in terms of being able to stack them and organize them. If you have experience with buckets, once they stick together, it's a atomic force that's very difficult to actually ever separate them again. Sometimes they decide they're life mates, and good luck shattering those bonds. So that's why I like using new buckets. It helps a lot on the organization end, and it also gives the customers a sense of consistency. And I like the black buckets because they're easy to keep clean. They don't show stains, but they also do show, you know, bits of food waste and stuff. So they're a lot easier to keep clean in that sense. Oops, not yet. Gosh, you guys. Okay, billing. Last with billing, you know, really, again, you know, good record keeping is going to be a very important part of everything you hear from people here. It's particularly important in this case because when you go to bill, you want to make sure that you have an idea of what kind of material you've been collecting, how often, if they've missed a pickup, or if they're putting out extra material, you may need to change their service level. We offer a bi-weekly and a weekly service, so depending on how much material people are collecting rather, you know, there's different tiers, and then of course those prices adjust so that people see the value in what they're diverting. And then, yeah, so it's important to know, you know, which customers are bi-weekly, so you know which ones to expect to have their bucket out or not have their bucket out. And again, missed pickups, putting out the wrong material, over volume, all that kind of stuff. If you have a way to keep that record as you go through your list, it'll really, really help you out in the long run. So I highly encourage you, make a list, have your customers' names, numbers, addresses, and an ability to make a note. I use a live Google Doc for that. Paper works, there's all kinds of different ways to do it, but I use a spreadsheet and live Google Docs. So, and with that, again, it helps a lot because as you use accounting software, which the more customers you get, the more I encourage you to use some sort of accounting software to keep track of any money that you're making. Hopefully you're making a ton. And it really helps at the end of the year when you go to file your taxes that you have these records and you have a billing system that's already in place. and also helps to give them a professional bill every month. Cool, so full cycle. So these guys are awesome. They have a bicycle pickup service. Their service is different. They use recycled buckets, which is amazing, and they drop their material into bins and then leave the same bucket. So in this case, their customers are responsible for the cleanliness of their buckets and using them, and that's clearly communicated to them. So it's a known expectation, and their customers are happy. And I will bring Isaac up here in the next section here to speak to a little bit to his service. So that's how our service looks: buckets, liners, pumpkins, some washing. Washing's very time-consuming. 200 customers a week. I'm washing a lot of buckets and spending a lot of time on that. I certainly don't mind, but it is something to be aware of. There's a lot of other things that happen with a service like this. But you still want to make sure that you let people know, as clean as you can get these buckets, they're still not food safe. Once you handle compost, it's the same as handling garbage. You want to make sure and keep your hands clean. This is our washing station. These are pour-through grates there on the right, sink on the left, hose, containers. I actually use a laundry detergent, a biodegradable laundry detergent. It works very well. It's easy to rinse off, a lot cheaper than dish soap, and works just as well. Little pro tip there. So bioliners, pros and cons. I'll go over these quickly. Less cleaning, really saves a lot of water. If you have really dirty buckets, you're talking 3 or 4 times the amount of water that you're going to need to wash them. It does extend the life of the buckets, keeps them a lot cleaner and a lot less smelly. It does make the processing easier, I found. There's a lot less banging on the buckets, scraping, all that kind of stuff. There's quite a few cons, unfortunately. The pros, I have to say, though, as far as scaling, if you don't have a lot of customers and you're willing to clean the buckets and spend that extra time and water, then excellent. Once you start to get more customers, that amount of time and water and energy just keeps going up and up. So that's something to keep in mind. So the cons, of course, it does add a cost. I think they're about 15 cents a bag, which isn't too bad, but that's at a bulk purchase. I will say BioBags is a California-based company. They do give discounts to community composters. So if you're interested in going that route, I highly recommend checking out that company. It's not easy to compost bioplastic. That's the dirty secret of bioplastic. If you don't know it yet, get good with it, because it's terrible, but it's real, and no one likes it. And unfortunately, we don't have a good solution for that right now. I do compost some of the bags, but most of them, unfortunately, I'm not able to compost at this time. My system is not, as it is large, it's not commercially grade, so I don't have like a giant macerator, for example, or other equipment to actually be able to process this material in a commercial sense. Which even you'll find most commercial composters also won't accept bioplastic. So again, it's kind of the dirty secret there. And of course, with that, your carbon footprint does increase, and it also adds to a culture of people saying, oh, well, there's already bioplastic in there, I'll add more bioplastic. They seem to be okay with it. Again, if anybody's going to use plastic, you should use bioplastic. Hopefully you don't have to. It's a better alternative, but it's still difficult to deal with. So, let's see, so the commercial. So this is picking up from a grocery store. You'll see they're 32-gallon commercial brutes. Highly recommend that. A lot of these things are the same. One thing that's different, you can train staff at locations a lot easier. You want to make sure that if a business, a restaurant, whoever is going to be doing this kind of a program, you want to very clearly communicate, again, what you can and can't accept. what, how they're going to be adding material to the bin, and make sure that anybody who's adding material to that bin is trained on that list. Oops, did it again. And the signage, you should make sure that that it's in whatever languages are being used in the kitchen or back of the house or wherever the material is being collected. And it's also really, really important, again, take a picture, have a manager, have a point person for your commercial accounts, be able to communicate to them. If you get a lot of contamination in a bin, they need to know about it, and most of the time, they'll be able to do something about it, and they'll say, oh, I know where that station is, I know who put that in there, I'll talk to them. And this is super important and very helpful. So a little bit of redundancy. The commercial service that is a little more demanding in the sense that these folks are going to be very reliant on you being able to take this material, get it out of their way, so that they can continue with their operations. If they see a value in your consistency and you're removing that material, they're much more likely to want to pay you. And I always recommend getting paid for your work. So that's something that you really want to keep in mind, that there's going to be a lot more expectation for that material. So even if you have to go rent a U-Haul or borrow a buddy's truck, you definitely don't want to leave your commercial customers hanging. And make sure that you always know, or if you have your arm go out, you want to make sure that you've got somebody who can help you and make sure that that material is still being processed. Because you really can't, everybody knows life happens, things happen, and so that's why people are usually really forgiving. But nonetheless, a business, consistency is always the hallmark of a good professional. So you really want to make sure and try and keep that going. Containers, the way I structure containers with commercial customers, I do the same swap service. So they fill up a garbage can. I swap that garbage can with another one of their garbage cans, or 2 or 3 or 5. And so they have empty, rinsed cans. So with that, I ask them to purchase those cans, own those cans, and clearly label those cans as theirs. That cuts down on my costs. It also gives them a higher sense of responsibility on the program itself. If I do provide the cans, then I will charge, I think it's a $1 per can per pickup fee as a rental fee to help cover the lifetime replacement costs of those cans. A brute garbage can and lid is pretty expensive. I think they're like around $70 right now. So they're very valuable. They do get stolen. So you really want to make sure that wherever they're being stored, there's some sort of safety there, and that includes on your end as well. We're at the point where I have a cargo container full of buckets and cans, mainly because the biggest thieves I have are bears, and they think it's the funnest game in the world to play hide the can in the forest. They love it. So this is a festival we did. This is Oyster Fest. This is one of 3 trailers that I filled, including my truck bed. This was a big festival, a lot of work. Absolutely, very, very fun. My wife and I, we hand sorted the material the entire day, along with volunteers bringing us material. It was a great, great event, and I highly recommend when there's thousands of people contributing to bins, especially if it's just a chance encounter, a quick interaction. You're definitely going to want to make sure that you have people monitoring those stations and that you put eyes on that material yourself. Because with this kind of volume, if you had 5 or 10% contamination in this, you would be looking at an exponential amount more work and a very difficult time getting that out, and even on the back end. So start with your vendors. It's a great way. We as composters have a really unique and really awesome position where we actually can tell businesses and vendors what to buy. So when we say, how do we make a difference? You can get people to buy paper. You can get people to buy compostable serviceware. And that's a big step, because if it's not being generated at all, if none of that plastic is being purchased, then it's not going into a landfill. So it's a really powerful position that you have, and when you have a really clear sense of exactly what you can and can't take, that also is very helpful for communicating that to vendors. We do take paper. Paper is difficult. I'll get a little bit more into that. Make sure the signage is same with the commercial. And actually residential too, I'll send them a PDF, ask them to print it, put it on their fridge. You want to make sure and have a list somewhere with people who are in charge of sorting that material, putting material into the bin, or screening material that goes into the bin that they know, and they have a sign that they can reference as well. So monitor the collection station with volunteers usually is the best. We're all hand sorting material here unless anybody has a $1 million material sorting facility that they're hiding in their back pocket. We're all going to be going through this with our hands and our eyes. And so paper, I could do an entire module on composting paper, but one of the things that I did with this particular material is, I soaked all of these cans with probably, well, I actually used rinse water on some of them, so I know for a fact that they all got about 10 gallons of water. And that was enough to get that to start and be a lot easier to compost. Some signage. This is in front, so you see we call those kidney beans there. It's not super easy, but those signs correspond to the signs on top of the cans. And what we did is, this was actually a really great idea of Carly Tambling, who is a great volunteer coordinator. Put the materials on a board, so that people aren't reading it off a list, but they're actually seeing the physical items that are and aren't acceptable. You can see on the right, those telltale green bands are compostable, commercially compostable plastic-lined containers. They are not. Awesome. One of our trash talkers, right? So, she has a radio, she's got gloves, she's got safety gear, she was trained, she gets a meal. I believe even there were stipends this year. You can see again there's signage. This is that same station. I don't know where the sign went there. They might have moved it around a little bit. But the top there explains what we're doing, who we are, and et cetera there. Most people won't take the time to read that, which is why having a person there, people will walk up to a person and hold out their material and say, what do I do? And it's great to be able to either just take it from them and put it in the right place, or it's another teaching moment where you can say, okay, well this goes here, this is compost, this is recyclable, this is landfill. Community interaction. It's drop-off service. So this is where how are we on time? Courtney? Good, okay. I wanted to let Isaac speak to this just a little bit, because he has an awesome drop-off. And I'm just going to put these up, and you can vamp how you will on your own. So, awesome. So this is Isaac from Full Cycle. Thank you, guys.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Isaac West, a founding member of Full Cycle Compost. I'm also here with Sky Hunterly, who is also a co-worker owner of mine. Thanks for the lovely introduction, Lloyd. So our drop-off program, has a lot of advantages and disadvantages to our pickup service. I really like the drop-off program because it's a lot less labor. We spend a lot of hard working hours pedaling compost around on bicycles, and it's really nice to have people just bring it to the site for us. I'm able to manage the drop-off program all by myself, and normally, that takes 4 times the amount of working hours to do so when you're bringing it all there. First step, find a location. Rats are a major concern, whether you're doing drop-off or not, but it's even more of a concern with drop-off because the public are interacting with it. And so you want your compost site to have a good look and feel to it. You don't want to walk up and just see rats scurrying everywhere as you come up. And so our current system we're using is Compost Knox, which is just a style of classic wooden compost bins with hardware cloth. And we find that if you mix it frequently, that really helps. yeah, there you can see our compost Knox bins. And the front is little boards that you can kind of just slot right out for easy unloading. And the tops, we actually use little gas struts in the back so that you can open those lids with just a pinky, which is really nice because we have a lot of older folks who were complaining they couldn't open the lids very easily. So just little things like that, responding to customer feedback, kind of fine-tuning your drop-off site, because again, it's a site for the public. So you don't want something that is difficult to use. You know, before we were like, we don't mind heavy lids, we're all young, healthy, fit lads, but like, no, you know, listen to your customer feedback. We have a sawdust pile that we keep there next to it. We find that sawdust is pretty easy to come by in Humboldt County because there's so many tree trimming services, but they're just looking to get rid of it. So it's free for us. We just have them drop it off at our site. We mix sawdust instead of wood chips. We used to use wood chips, but we find that wood chips don't break down on the same timeline that food scraps do. And so you end up with wood chips in your finished product, which you just have to sift out later. So we find about 40-60 ratio is good, but you'll play with it depending on what your material is. You know, carbon, nitrogen, food scraps being the nitrogen component. And, you know, yeah, like I said, the biggest advantage to having a drop-off program is that you don't have to go and pick up the food waste. So all you have to do is show up, turn it, and then when you have a finished product, you know, you can just have a storage bin, or ideally try and sell it. We partner with local farms, so we have 4 sites, and all of our sites are next to local gardens. So we give away a large part of what we create to the garden that's on site. And so then you don't have, you know, again, going back to the rats, you don't have as much of a problem with those sites because you can just give your material directly to the farm that you're on. And so, because selling it can be challenging. A lot of people, you know, it's mainly just a marketing problem. Like, it's a great product, but, you know, buying compost, if you're not in a store, most people go to the gardening store when they look for fertilizer. They're not, you know, looking at your little website or something, or your niche page on Instagram, right? I think that's mostly what comes to mind.
No, that's great. That's so good.
Any questions? Yeah?
So, the time that you spend turning, sifting, all of that, with the program that I am currently in, County Cycle, they are looking at 10 hours a week for us to do our part. Realistically, how many hours do you spend doing the work?
I would say turning takes about every 2 days for about 20 minutes. It's short. And then you'll have maybe a 2-hour, if you're one person, it's about a 2-hour session where you're taking everything out of the bin, sifting it, putting it onto a tarp, and then probably putting that tarp into a truck, bringing it to someone who wants it. So you could totally manage a drop-off site in 10 hours a week or less. It's very low input.
So how big are you?
So these bins here are about, the total footprint is like, let's see, each one is 4 by 5-ish. So, you know, each one fits about a yard or less. I don't know. Those are rough numbers, but they fill up. We have about 20 drop-off customers at the moment compared to about 100 residential customers. And so what the market is telling us is that people are more interested in having their product picked up, even though we offer the drop-off service at less than half the price, $4 compared to $6.50 per bucket per week. And we allow people to have up to a 5-gallon bucket worth of drop-off, just like they have a 5-gallon bucket in front of their house, same volume. And that fills up in about 2 months. So, you know, those 3 bins there last us about 6 months before they all need to be emptied. But ideally, if you're mixing it properly, that is like 2 to 3 days a week, the bin on the far left, you know, which we'll mark with a green sign as the active bin, will fill up, and then we'll change the sign to the middle bin. And by the time the 3rd bin is full, the 1st bin is done cooking. And so you kind of just have this infinitely repeating cycle as long as you've got at least 3 bins and you're turning them on a regular basis. And it's pretty interesting just to learn, like, okay, what do people want? You know, you give them this much lower price option so that people don't have a lot of money, can still participate in community composting. And then you have the more premium service for people who can afford it. And we even run a income equity program so that people can choose to pay 3 different rates. and excluding the drop. They can pay $10 a week for pay it forward. They can pay $6.50 a week for our normal rate, or they can pay $4.50 a week for the equity discount. And so some folks choose to pay more to help the folks who can't pay as much. And we find that it's a really good model. And actually, about the same amount of people who sign up for income equity also sign up for pay it forward. So we find that actually, financially, it totally balances out, which is kind of amazing, really, that people choose to pay more for a service they don't have to. So yeah.
Thank you. Because I'm hearing the worm guy talk about your business, but you started, what I believe I'm hearing is, like they have started, and you have grown over the years, because you've been doing this for quite some time. So I thank you for sharing where you're at, and you as well for how you've grown, because we need that black gold to change our environment. So I really appreciate your time, and with your break and surgery, you're here, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we've been in business for about 3 years, and we're at about 100 residential customers and about 20 drop-off customers. We find that, again, the residential program grows much faster because people just love convenience. That's the world we live in, and we're happy to provide it. But yeah, Lloyd's been doing this for a long time, and it's interesting to see like the differences in the new kids on the block versus the seniors.
You can call him an OG.
Yeah, he's an OG, exactly. Well, thank you guys very much. I'm happy to answer more questions.
Quick question. You said you had 100 residential pickups. How many cycles do you have to collect that material?
We find that a sustainable model is one rider per route. So, you're hauling like a 200-pound trailer behind you. We used to have one person riding 2 days a week. And that can work for a while, but people get hurt, people need time off. And so you may have 4 riders for your 4 routes, but really you might be switching those 2 people off. So you'll have one person taking 2 days a week for maybe a couple months, and then they get a couple months off or something. Or they just do it once a week. Because if you're having someone who's riding a rad bike, which is a pretty underpowered e-bike as far as e-bikes go because it doesn't have a mid-drive motor. You really want mid-drive motors, but they're more expensive. Then you need one rider per route because, as Sky will tell you, that trailer gets really heavy. And in Humboldt County, there are quite a lot of hills. So it also has a lot to do with the geography. But for us in Arcata, one rider per week has been more sustainable. We've had a lot of people burn out. Like I used to ride 3 routes a week, and I simply couldn't keep up with it. I had some terrible tendon problems in my legs, and I just had to stop riding because I was like, wow, this is just too much. So definitely finding that balance is important.
That's 25 customers per route, roughly?
Yeah.
Okay.
So which is about, when the trailer's full, it's about 200 pounds, plus a 70-pound bike.
How long does that take for the rider to get to that?
It used to only take an hour when we had shorter routes. Now the routes take about 2.5 hours plus a half hour at the site, unloading, mixing in carbon, washing the 6 totes that are on the trailer. So it's about 3 hours, 4 days a week. But after you've been doing that for 3 hours, you're going to go home and take a 2-hour break. You're tired. Like, you're not just going to go from one job to the next. You're like, I'm beat. I think we have another question.
Yeah. So at your bins right there, do you have to go there and add water or anything? Or you just stir it?
In the summertime, I'll add water maybe once a month. It's easy to put too much water on it, but it definitely needs some. I just put a temperature gauge in there. And if I find that it's not cooking very well, I'll add a little water just to have a good moisture content. But it doesn't need a whole lot, but it shouldn't be super dry either.
Not in Humboldt County.
Yeah, not in Humboldt, exactly. Now that we're in the rainy season, I'll just drill really small holes in the roof and let it kind of drip in. But in the summer, it does need some water for sure. And you can kind of tell if the sawdust kicks up in the wind and blows in your face, it's too dry. That's how you know it's good. But yeah, a little water's great.
And are there worms in yours too?
Sometimes they find it on their own, but they aren't because it cooks at 150 degrees, so the worms don't like that. But if you make a pile on the ground, the worms will find their way in through the bottom and then hang out where it's cooler. And then when the pile kind of finishes cooking, the worms will finish your process. And that makes for more finished compost. And when you go to put that on food, the worms add a huge benefit to the compost itself. So you actually have a better finished product if you can let the worms find it. But this site here is on top of some concrete because, again, it's just better rat mitigation to have concrete around. Again, rats are the #1 problem. We would just have big open piles in the middle of the ground if the rats weren't such a problem. We wouldn't have to build these bins, but it's all because of those rats.
And in the country, it's the bears.
And in the country, it's the bears. It's one or the other, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Lloyd. Yeah.
Thank you, Isaac. Yeah, and you know, this is what we're here for. You know, these guys are going to be here all weekend, so you know, you have more questions. You know, let's chop it up. Not the worms, the conversation. Okay, I think we're pretty much there. Yep, that's the end. So, yeah. So, are there any more questions for me? No? Good? All done? Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate you.